If you cast your mind way back to 2019, try to remember something. A divide between internet drummers and, well, non-internet drummers. You'd see screeds against internet famous drummers from analog famous drummers. The implication was clear. Internet drummers were using social media and the power of video to cut in line in the normal dues paying process. Now, of course, everyone's an internet drummer. All the brick and mortar, dues paying analog cats are now embracing the power of social media and YouTube to get them bigger reach, promote their in-person gigs, and not so subtly, negotiate better deals. No, you listen to me. I've got 500,000 Insta followers. You pay us 50, or we'll just live stream from my basement and charge our followers virtual admission. But let's not be so quick to forget. The pioneers who were doing it before Splamic made it mandatory. Today on the channel, for the last video in 2021, a little video essay. Who were these early pioneers? What forced them to be early adopters of the internet? And how did they upset the apple cart? And what are all creatives gradually learning from them? Today on 80/20, internet famous drummer versus real world famous drummer. Stay tuned. Guys, before we get on to the main theme of today's video, quick sponsor message. This video is brought to you by me, the 80/20 drummer, in part because I pay myself way better than any of the other sponsors. I'm talking to you, Skillshare. I'm talking to you, Brilliant. Anyway, if you've been watching the channel for a while and are looking for a way to take your drumming to the next level and want a completely free entry into doing that, just click the link below the player and download my free 3-video mini course. And also stick around till the end of the video for more details on how you can make 2022 your best year of drumming ever. What? Okay, on with the show. I have to admit to being giddy about something. I sometimes get recognized in real life. It's very occasional and it's always tremendously flattering. Because I'm just an average guy who makes drum videos from his practice room. And I think that comes across. People I meet who've seen the channel are always fired up to talk about drums, and there's no barrier. Still, it was crazy to me to realize that people were recognizing me from this thing. The first time I realized anyone was watching my channel was at NAMM in 2015. I was in the audience for a yearly drum show at a church nearby the convention, and I ran into people who had seen the channel. That eventually evolved into an invitation to play on the drum show the following year, which was maybe too soon. But I knew I'd crossed the Rubicon. I had people who knew who I was and who were watching what I was doing. Not because I played with any big names, not because I'd gotten any big sponsorships, but because I sat in my practice room making videos week after week. And I wasn't the first. Remember Pomplamoose?
Do you remember the 21st night?
They went viral with a cover of Earth, Wind & Fire's classic September. Produced pretty no frills in their house, just letting the uniqueness of their sound speak for itself. By the way, one of the members of Pomplamoose, Jack Conti, founder of Patreon. More on that later. Anyway, maybe Pomplamoose doesn't ring a bell, but Dirty Loops probably does. Come on, girl. The fiery Scandinavian trio did covers of classic pop songs with, shall we say, Berkeley stylings. Or maybe you're a jazz nerd like I am, and remember Lewis Cole and Know Her.
She's a bum leg to the sun, I'm a bum leg to get some.
Like all the other bands I've mentioned, they toured and did real-life gigs, but how they became international niche superstars was jumping with great, earwormy, shareable music into a completely unfortified flank of international attention known as the internet. Drum pioneers were starting to jump into this space too, like Taylor Gordon and Harry Murray.
Great, so let's talk about 5 awesome things to do with the metronome.
And Jared Falk.
Today we're going to be talking a little bit about playing ghost notes around the drums.
And Adam Tuminaro.
Today we're doing one of my favorite lessons. This is an awesome gospel fill.
And maybe the godfather, this guy.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Drum Lab. I'm Mike Johnston.
Okay. and also this guy. This is the series that doesn't just tell you to practice smarter, not harder. It actually shows you how. And this was before anybody had any idea being a YouTuber was cool. That's partly why it wasn't all smooth sailing for these early folks. A lot of them faced criticism from other musicians making their livings in mostly an analog way. More on that later. But first, what was motivating us to invest in camera gear and software and spend 10 to 15 hours a week hunched over Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere? Because if you remember back to the early 2010s, there was another way of getting noticed and getting clout. Having gigs. Before anybody was posting playing on Instagram or YouTube, everybody was posting about their gigs on something called the Facebook. Before the Instagram lifestyle flex, or the look who I'm hanging with flex, there was the Facebook gig flex. I don't know how many people remember this, but there was actually this annoying app where you could upload your entire gig calendar to the app, and then the app would publish to Facebook automatically whenever you had a gig, which is the ultimate flex because it's like, hey, I've got so many gigs, I can't post them personally, individually, so I have this app to do it for me. Gigs with famous people, summer tours to Europe, etc. So clearly the way to get clout, money, sponsorships, etc. was through gigs, relationships with major artists, connections, you get it. So why not just go out and get gigs then? Well, I'll turn it over to 2020 Nate to explain. Anyway, I mounted an assault, leading my own bands. In that manner, I played gigs in New York for the following 4 years. We'd play wherever they'd take us, and gradually I grew frustrated. First, many of the best musicians were choosy about the venues they play in. Certain spots were on the list and hence worth people's time, whereas other spots were less so. It was also a dance to get enough people in the room to avoid playing to tables and chairs. Again, embarrassing if you've got an international touring artist on stage with you. I wanted to pay the musicians a good amount that reflected my respect and appreciation for them, and I'd often have to do that out of my own pocket, because I was lucky to break even with door money. Getting gigs in those named spots grew harder and harder because everybody else was trying to get the same gigs. So it started to get difficult to get the reps in. Just like a comic craving stage time, I knew if I wasn't gigging regularly, I'd get rusty. I get hustled to get gigs with other people's bands, but that required hitting the late night jam sessions instead of spending time with my family. And those gigs were often at crappy venues, and many of those artists weren't willing to pay out of their pockets. And sometimes you'd be left with $5, a beer, and a $160 parking ticket for learning 3 sets worth of other people's music, schlepping uptown with your drums, and getting home at 2 a.m. Now, I'm not saying any of this was unsurmountable. Or like, if something easier came along, it was ripe for disruption. Remember standing in line at Blockbuster? It wasn't the worst, it's just that when Netflix came along, and artists like Pomplamoose and Dirty Loops, and drummers like Harry and Adam probably had the same instinct. In fact, Jack Conte of Pomplamoose created one of the first mature platforms for creators to get paid directly by their audiences, instead of needing record companies, art galleries, or venues. Patreon. Hey, it's getting really crowded over here. A lot of the politicking and competing for gig slots is getting in the way of pure creativity. Maybe there's more space over here on the internet. So began what I'd call the early Renaissance. Beginning around 2015-2016, you started to see more internet drum creators popping up who were known primarily for their online stuff. Brandon Scott.
What's up?
Gabe Helguera.
Hello, my beautiful friends.
Drumeo. And these were like the YouTube guys. And then you had people like Andy Prado, Forrest Rice, J. Rod Sullivan, Justin Scott on Instagram. Casey Neistat was becoming a big deal. So it was the age when we started to hear YouTuber as a career description. And Instagrammers were starting to get paid big money by sponsors. So it was the beginning of the word influencer. And then drummers started getting sponsorship deals and making money based primarily on their online stuff, more so than their offline stuff. And that's arguably when the backlash started. Okay, that's being a little dramatic. But you did start to hear establishment drummers griping about the online folks. Let's game this out for a second. These influencer kids these days have never had to play real gigs. I've toured for 20 years. I've played with a who's who of all the big artists. Nobody was offering me a sponsorship when I was 23. Okay, boomer, but your ecosystem was like closed off to many of us. If you didn't have a gig with a named player, there was zero chance of anybody hearing you. Plus, heaven forbid you didn't have money for music schools where people make those connections. Or you were a late bloomer who didn't arrive at Berklee fully formed and ready for tour with Erykah Badu and needed like another decade to develop. But it's all about chops for you kids. I had to learn how to hold down a pocket every night for years. If people didn't dance, I didn't get paid. I didn't get sick days. I didn't get to drop a beat just because I had the flu or dysentery. You kids just want to chop and edit down the best 25 seconds and then get sponsored right away. Right, because we adapted to the medium that was available to us. If there'd been more space available in traditional bands, we would have taken it. But many of us are getting gigs on the back of our internet drumming. Right, you're taking them from us. First of all, no, because we're growing the pie, but even if we were, you get the idea. The debate over the rise of the internet drum influencer mirrored the larger cultural debate in a lot of ways. Older generation complaining about kids these days. Kids saying, okay, boomer, but we didn't have the same opportunities as you, so we had to create our own, and now you're begrudging us that? That, and also the difference between true internet entrepreneurs who treated their brands as businesses through and through, and influencers who grew influence platforms, but still mostly get paid at the whim of sponsors, are beyond the scope of this video. But now, let's fast forward to the present, because something happened. I'm trying to remember what it was. Give me a second. Oh, that's it. The coronavirus. Yes! Yep. All of a sudden, everybody was at home. No more gigs. And that's when what you might call the late renaissance started. Zach Grooves, who's now arguably the #1 solo drum YouTuber, wasn't even on YouTube in a big way before the pandy.
Seriously.
All right.
All you have to do is this.
But he's clearly an internet native. But plenty of analog native drummers are now getting online, and some in pretty impressive fashion. Now, knock on wood, we have gigs again. But it's unlikely we'll ever go back to the global outbreak phase. Why? Let's turn it over once again to our discussion panel. So then I tell this club owner to go fuck himself. I'm like, what is this, 2018? I don't want to say I told you so, but no, listen to me. It's a totally new era. I don't need to play for peanuts or schlep to the sticks to teach lessons or move to another state just because I got a faculty position. I can fire up the internet and start booking Skype lessons, baby. Yeah, you're still spending time one-to-one to make money, but I get them. And I told Zildjian to go fuck themselves too. I don't need them to host clinics. I can do a virtual clinic and get paid before I even... Anyway. So there you have it. I guess if there's a thesis to this, it's, we told you so, but that sounds a little sanctimonious. Maybe it's something more like, everybody thinks it's crazy till it works. Or, if you do the same thing as everybody else, you're gonna get the same I don't know. Anyway, adios 2021. Hope everybody had a good one, and I'll see you next year. Hope everybody had a good one, and I'll see you next year. Oh, I almost forgot. Sponsor read, last sponsor read of 2021. This video, like many others, is brought to you by me, the 80/20 drummer. If you've been watching the channel for a hot minute, if you've been a lurker, you've seen some stuff you liked, maybe you've learned a little bit from the videos, you might be ready to study with me. And if you're an intermediate drummer looking to take your drumming to the next level, I recommend my course, the 80/20 coaching course, which is like 3 to 6 months of studying with me, all for around the price of a single lesson. But we only open that up a few times a year, and we only open it up to my exclusive mailing list. Which is why, if you'd like to get on the list, and you'd like to get a free gateway drug, some people have complained about me saying that, but I'm sorry, we can't nerf the entire world. If you'd like to get a free trigger alert gateway drug, I recommend you click the link below the player and enter your email address in on the next page, and I'll send you completely free my 3-video mini course. Talks about fundamentals, talks about coordination, talks about jazz, talks about soloing, and I contend that it'll make you better in the next 3 weeks than you've gotten in the previous 6 months. That's a bold claim, and I invite you to put it to the test by clicking below the player and entering your email address in. Anyway, dudes, honestly, Happy New Year to everybody. It's been real. Always enjoy making these for you all. See you in 22.